In the next two sections, we're going to be talking a little bit about what you can expect to experience in the courses that you're going to be doing over the next few weeks. It will be a different experience to what you're used to, participating in a class with students who come from a very different background, different disciplines, and who use different terminology and language to what you're used to, and learning from instructors who also come from these diverse disciplines. And some people sometimes find these experiences disorienting, and other people find that, and sometimes people find it exciting to be able to learn from and share ideas with other disciplines. So in the courses, you'll be spending a lot of time discussing complex problems with students and instructors from other disciplines. We hope that this will be a stimulating experience for you and that you will learn a lot, but sometimes it may be challenging, especially at first. You'll need to learn how to discuss your ideas with people who don't know the technical vocabulary that you're very familiar with. You may need to think about science and knowledge in new ways and ways that are different. You need to listen to people who may have a worldview that is very different and unfamiliar to yours. So in this section, we're going to describe some of the common experiences and challenges in transdisciplinary learning. There has been a number of models developed to think about the experience of transdisciplinary learning. And this one I think is quite useful. It talks about 3 steps in the process of transdisciplinary learning. So this first step focuses on just learning to communicate with participants and with team members who have different perspectives and different views. The second step involves learning to communicate yourself, to people who maybe don't understand your discipline, don't have the same background that you do, and to be able to participate to discussions from different perspectives, and to work together to try and develop a plan of action and planned actions for complex problems. And the third step is where it's not just about the sharing of ideas, but where you try and bring together ideas and inputs into an integrated or a harmonious model. So they talk about the convergence of viewpoints. Different viewpoints come together and come up with one single new way of thinking about a complex problem. So for each of these steps, I'm going to talk about some of the things that you might experience in your coursework over the next few weeks, as well as some things that may be a problem. So the first step, as we said, refers to your first attempts to discuss an issue with people from very different backgrounds to yours. So some of the things you will need to do and learn to do are, first of all, to listen to people share their understanding of an issue in ways that are different from what you're used to. Secondly, we hope that as you hear other people talk about their experiences of these complex problems, that will open up your mind to new ways of looking at things. So how does a businessman look at these problems? How does a farmer, or how does a community leader look at these problems? How does someone look at these problems from a gender perspective or from an agricultural science perspective, and so on? You will need to start attempting to explain your perspective without using your familiar terminology, and this may be frustrating, and without assuming that people have the same background knowledge and assumptions that you do. So things that people sometimes find challenging in this step is that it may be a bit surprising that other people may have very different priorities about what they see as the most important aspect of a problem, when you have been maybe focusing on a particular aspect that's relevant to your discipline. You may feel as if you lose some confidence by not being able to use your familiar language and terminology. And you maybe feel that there's some frustrations with the slowness of communication and the difficulty of making sure that everyone within the group understands what's being said. The second step focuses on the attempt to contribute ideas from multiple perspectives to develop an action plan. So it's sort of like brainstorming from all of the different perspectives. What are the ideas about what we need to do to address these particular complex problems? So some of the things that you might experience in your classes and your groups, okay, is that you will need to start thinking about how your ideas and the work that you're usually used to doing fits into a larger picture of social action in particular. You will need to focus on how your ideas can be turned into action in the real world. So you'll need to have a very practical orientation. And then you'll need to listen carefully to others expressing their ideas and keep on asking yourself, okay, how does that connect to what I do and the way that I think about things, or the way that we think about things in our discipline? Hopefully, you will start to get some new ideas out of these problems, and it will start to be an exciting and interesting time as you think about new ways of addressing complicated problems. Some of the things that people find challenging about this stage is that it may be challenging to, as particularly for people with an academic orientation and who have been working on coursework that has an academic orientation, to shift your mindset to a very practical orientation, such as that held by business people, people working in their different jobs and roles in the community, people who are trying to lead communities and lead organisations in communities. Also may be difficult for you to see your contribution as just one part of a larger strategy that needs to fit in with many other parts. And it may be difficult to adapt your language to the needs of other group members, and to start with your team developing a simple language to communicate your joint action plan as that action plan develops. In the third step, it's a continuation really of the second step. It's where you're trying to integrate the ideas from the different team members and develop a common understanding of the issues and plans of action. So in the second step, it's likely that you will still see the different ideas from the different disciplines or the different sectors of society. But when you get to the third step, okay, these should start to integrate into more or less seamless action plan. It doesn't mean that the ideas from different disciplines disappear, but they shouldn't be standing out as obvious in the plan for action that you produce. So some of the experiences that you may have in this step is that you can be going through a lot of work in trying to understand how different ideas connect, okay, and it will require a lot of discussion and a lot of discussion about how you will explain the ideas in ways that are easy to understand for lay people and for people outside of your group. At this stage, it may be necessary for you to try and develop a deeper understanding of other disciplines of team members, even thinking about some of the background like the history and the theories of your discipline, the history and theories of the discipline of other team members, so that you are starting to actually develop an understanding of how the other team members think, not just understanding their words, but understanding the theories, the frameworks that they work from. And you need to recognize that group members are likely to have different preferred ways of thinking. So some people really like brainstorming and coming up with lots of ideas, and some people really like to be critical about ideas straight away. Okay, and as soon as someone comes up with an idea, they start to be critical. Some people like to think in words, some people like to think in pictures, and within your groups you're going to have all of these different preferences. And when you think about working to develop a document or an action plan or a strategy for dealing with complex problems, then you need to enable your team to work together effectively. So some of the possible challenges at this stage is that you may feel discouraged by the complexity of problems, okay? Especially when you start to think critically about the different ideas that have been proposed by the group members. You may feel frustrated that you can't just use your familiar theoretical frameworks because they may seem really good and comprehensive to you, and yet they don't address the whole of the problem in a broad enough way. Another thing at this stage is that it's often easier with many things to identify problems than it is to come up with ideas for solutions. And so this phase is really about starting to not just say, oh, the causes of the problems are this and this and this and this, and just to analyse all of the causes of a problem, but to start to think about practical actions that can be taken for as solutions, and then to think about plans to put those actions into practice through business, through community activities, and so on. And the final challenge maybe is that this may involve your group working together on a document, okay? And often writing things as a group is challenging, and you need to decide whether you want to write everything as a group or you want to assign people to write a first draft and then discuss what you produce as a group. So here are some general ideas for dealing with the challenges that you might experience. The first is to recognise that it is expected that there will be times that you feel a bit confused and disoriented when you are listening to students and instructors from different disciplines, and that this is a normal part of learning. The second point is to recognise that a lot of confusion arises from differences in vocabulary and terminology. So you need to keep on trying to translate your own terminology and that of your classmates into plain, non-technical language. Okay? And keep on asking yourself, what does this mean for the people in the community? You need to be conscious to spend extra time listening and trying to understand. You need to make sure you're not just thinking about your own ideas or preparing your own answers when your classmates are speaking. So often we think about the next thing that we want to say, but in transdisciplinary teamwork, we really need to be focusing on, am I correctly understanding what the other people are saying at the moment? And I think it's really important that you expect the conversation to be fun. You expect to learn new things. That sometimes things are going to make you laugh when you think about things from a different perspective. And that it should overall be an enjoyable and fun process and a stimulating way of thinking about things. Finally, I think you need to try to keep different thinking tasks of the group separated in time. So there's nothing more than more confusing than when some people are trying to analyse a problem and others are brainstorming ideas for action, and some people are focused on criticising those ideas, and they're all doing it at the same time. So in the next section, we'll be looking at some techniques and approaches to manage the process of the group discussion and make sure that the group understands what they're doing at each point in time, and to work together effectively as a team.